Our third lecture, this one is today about the hoof capsule and about the inside of the hoof capsule, the corium. What you see here is a hoof capsule empty with everything taken out. On the outside, the horn that we can see with the corner band around here that merges here into the bulbs. And on the inside, this area here is the sole. And then we have the frog area. And we have the lamellae area. It's actually the other side of the lamellae, also known as epidermis. And here in this groove we have the coronary bulge. These are the parts of the horn capsule that the hoof capsule, the horn capsule, keeps the hoof from, the sensitive part of the hoof from being injured. This hoof capsule looks so benign in itself, but it is a rather complicated mechanism, and this is what today's lecture is all about. How is the horn connected to the coffin bone, which we talked so much about last time? How do the two hook together? How does this all work? And this takes a little bit wrapping your mind around it, and I hope I get this all clear enough. I have to admit, when I got into hoof care, this wasn't clear to me at all. I was wrestling with this a long time. Therefore, I tried to explain it a little bit better. In this schematic here, what you have here is this here, this area is the coffin bone. Then this area that has these little fingers on is the corium, the lamella area that connects to the coffin bone and is very vascular and has lots of nerve endings in. Then this light area here is the area that these lamellae produce. They put out horn, and they also put out horn tubules at a smaller rate, but they do. And then this area here, this whole area, is the actual wall. And we will learn today how they exactly hang together. This wall is produced here, all the way up here in the coronary bulge. And this little piece here is the periopal, and we talk about this in great detail as well. The outer hoof wall is also known as the stratum medium. This is shown here in the kind of yellow color. And this is, by the way, a very bad hoof capsule. But that's the best picture I could find. The outer stratum medium is the hoof wall. Starts up here in the coronary bulge and goes all the way to the ground. The very outside of the hoof wall is named the stratum externum. You don't need to remember this. You just need to have a good visual how this all comes together. You see here again, just to point this out, and as I always think the more I point it out, the better it gets. This here, let me get my pen back. This here is the coffin bone, this way. This here is the lamellar corium with its little fingers that show here. Hard to redo because they're so small. And these little fingers produce this kind of horn here, this here, which connects the lamellar corium to the hoof wall. And it produces soft horn and it produces little hoof tubules. You can see that here. And pushes those towards the outside of the hoof. The hoof wall also grows from up here. And we get to all of this. So it doesn't just grow from the coffin bone out, doesn't just grow this way, it also grows this way. And it constantly renews. Something else that's very important. That's why we are here together, because eventually we have to trim. The hoof wall grows in the coronary groove. This coronary groove, you can feel it at the very end of the hoof capsule. If you push in there, you feel how soft it is. That is where the horn tubules that make up the hoof capsule are produced, most of them. Here we have that hoof capsule again, and this shows the coronary groove. The stratum externum is better known as the periopal. And the periopal is a little piece of horn, almost like a skin, that is lying over the edge of the hoof capsule and protecting it from drying out, and also protecting it a little bit from injury, but mostly from drying out. When you have a lot of inflammation in the hoof capsule, that periopal usually grows a whole lot faster and gets thicker. It also merges here in the very back of the hoof capsule with the bulbs and then with the frog, which is not pointed out here, but you can, when you can see it in a live hoof. When you get the hoof really wet for quite a while, the periopal becomes much more obvious as it starts to plump up. And the periopal has its own little groove. This here was the coronary bulge and the coronary groove where the hoof capsule grows out of. And this here is the perioplic groove where the periopal grows out of, and you can actually see it here. And in most of the good sagittal cuts, dissections, you can see the periopal very well. Here it is in the sagittal cut, just pointed out again how the perioplic groove where the periopal grows from is just above the coronary groove where the wall grows from. Another structure in the hoof that is absolutely worth mentioning and causes lots of confusion and trouble in the hoof care world, at least in the barefoot hoof care world, are the bars. And they are basically a continuation of the wall. They come around with the wall, and one could say that the wall ends in the middle of the frog where the bars end in a healthy hoof. And these little ends here, they are by no means little, they are just in this drawing, they look small, are the bulbs. Together with the frog, the bulbs make a really fairly big part of the hoof. The bigger the bulbs are in general, the better the hoof health is. Then we have this part of the hoof that is the epidermis. It's the other part of the lamellae, the counterpart of the lamellae. And I think this becomes in a little while much more obvious. This is the inner part of the hoof capsule, stratum internum. And I think here it becomes a little bit clearer. It is not the red little fingers, but it is the white parts that are produced by the red little fingers. Red little fingers are the lamellae. This here is the epidermis. The lamellae would be the dermis. We also refer to it in hoof care as corium. And the corium is a little bit different from everything else, every other tissue that covers the body in the bone in the body. So here we have the stratum internum, these little folds that are produced by the lamellae. This is just another picture to show where this exactly takes place. Then we have, by this production here, this kind of horn pushed out. And this is usually yellow, this area. You see this as a yellow line in the hoof. This is not the white line. We get to the white line a little bit later. The outer part, the outer stratum medium, is, as we said earlier, produced from the coronary bulge, from the papillae that produce the horn tubules. And in the coronary bulge are not only the horn tubules produced, but there's also some soft interconnective horn produced that keeps the horn tubules stuck together. Otherwise it would look like a broom. The horn tubules are actually very hard, spiral formed, but they need to be glued together with something, and they are glued together with softer connective horn. And this softer connective horn, as a side remark, is highly dependent on water, on moisture. Here we see the real thing again, which I always think is much more interesting than all the drawings. You have here the coronary bulge. Let me get my pen back. This here is the coronary bulge, where all these little holes that you can see are the holes that the papillae make to build the horn tubules. And where there are no holes, that's interconnective horn. That's the softer horn that connects the horn tubules. Then you see here the epidermis, these lamellae folds, these folds that are produced by the lamellae, and they are horn that gets pushed out from the corium towards the hoof wall. Hoof wall grows down, this grows against it. Here we have the sole from the coffin bone side. This is the inner side of the sole. And it also has, just like the hoof wall, the mechanism is a little bit easier. It has papillae that produce horn tubules, and we believe that these horn tubules grow down and forward. So kind of always migrating a little bit forward. The horn tubules of the sole are not quite, the sole is not quite as hard as the wall, because the horn tubules are not quite as dense. They are not per square inch, are not as many horn tubules in the sole as there are in the wall. There's more connective horn, therefore we have a slightly softer horn material. Here you see the same picture from the side. This is the horn that is actually produced, and you can see how this runs forward. There's no question about it. It runs probably in this foot a little bit more forward than usual in the back, pathological hoof. But even here you see how the horn tubules that are formed by the corium of the sole are running forward. And here you can see when all the other structures are taken out, this is a rather thick sole, and this kind of horn protects the sensitive tissue, the dermis of the sole that is laid against the coffin bone. Here we have the sole from the outside. This is again not a healthy hoof by any stretch of imagination, but it shows the structure of the frog and the sole, and now we have hopefully a little bit better picture what is under this sole. Under the sole is solar corium, and the solar corium produces horn tubules. Corium in the hoof, no matter where it is, produces horn. Another picture of a frog, this one a little bit better, with really nice flat bulbs. And here we have the inside and the outside of the frog. Again, the inside of the frog here with the papillae that produce this here, actually this here, that produce the horn of the frog. Even more so than the sole, there is more connective soft horn, and less tubules, so the frog horn is softer than the sole horn again, and when you put your knife on it, in general much easier to cut. So every time that you have a lot of connective horn in a structure, that connective horn is highly dependent on moisture. Otherwise it will get very dry and the whole structure starts to shrink in a certain way. From the bottom, side by side, this is the hoof capsule, the horny part, and this is the sole corium as far as we can see it. All of this is sole corium. Then we have here the frog corium. And I like to take this away so it doesn't get too much writing. Then we have here something that looks a little different. And this is the bar corium. It's the same structure as in the coronary bulge, the corium that produces the hoof wall. It comes around here and it really ends in the middle of the frog. There's no question about it. So if the bar corium ends in the middle of the frog, shouldn't your bar end in the middle of the frog? That's just something that we're going to visit later again. But this is the underlying anatomy that makes us believe that the bar should end in the middle of the frog. And the frog corium, as you can see, is in this picture not so very, I should really find a different picture for that. You do not see those little papillae here that really let us know that there are horn tubules produced, but they are there as well. They are just even finer and smaller. Here we have this deal again with the bar. This is the wall. Of the hoof, and this here is or should be the bar. And this is the horn structure that is built by this structure. Same deal. Which brings us, and I have at the end of this lecture some more animations that we go through that hopefully makes this a little clearer. It's hard to explain horn without explaining corium, and it's hard to explain corium without explaining horn. So this is all hangs together. The plural of corium is coria, not coriums. And it really is the dermis, the innermost layer of the skin. Now, everywhere except in the hoof, the bone is covered by periosteum. It is a very thin layer of cover on the bone, and the periosteum has when the periosteum gets injured, it proliferates. When you get a real bang on your shin, you get a little bump there because the periosteum reacts angry about this and starts to get inflamed and builds bone in no time. The coffin bone also has a periosteum. This is not what we learned in school, but I learned this later. The coffin bone also has a periosteum. However, it does not react in the same way that the periosteum elsewhere on the bone reacts. So in the coffin bone and its corium is really something very unique. And this corium produces horn everywhere it is, no matter if it's lamellar corium, if it's coronary corium, sole frog corium, perioblique corium, it produces horn. And what we see here is the hoof wall taken off the hoof, and we see here lamellar corium. This lamellar corium is connected to the coffin bone. Inside this lamellar corium run a lot of blood vessels down to capillaries, arteries, and veins. This is a very bloody structure. This also has in it a lot of nerve endings, and this becomes very important later again. This is a frontal view of a hoof where we have taken the hoof capsule off, and you see up here the coronary bulge from which the hoof wall grows, goes all the way around. And this is the lamellar corium that covers the the coffin bone. This lamellar corium runs in sheets, little folds here. And it runs in the front of the hoof, along the toe, absolutely vertical, at least in a healthy hoof. If you have a very crooked hoof, these run a little bit more crooked. The lamellae run in the same direction as the hoof tubules that you can see in the horn wall. So if you look at a hoof tubule and you see that it is kind of running a little bit off center, then you can also tell that the lamellae under it and most likely the coffin bone are off center. This is the same scenario just shown from the side. We have here the lamellae of the lamellar corium running perpendicular to the ground. No, oblique, sorry. Oblique to the ground. And this is how your horn tubules run when you see it from the side. We saw this picture already on the left side. These lamellae, but this is a little bit bigger, producing horn from every little fold here, and I have some more drawings later to show you how many folds there are. And it produces this. This is the wall part of the hoof capsule. And this, when you pull this apart, these sheets here are still very bloody. They're by no means all horn. And here you see a little bit how this is in a schematic with the veins the arteries, the lymphatic system. And here you see these little extensions of all of these that make this connection between the lamellar corium and the hoof wall extremely tight. The connection between the lamellar corium and the hoof wall is very tight, much tighter than industrial strength Velcro. It doesn't come loose just so. It's not that if you gallop your horse for an hour and a half that all of a sudden this breaks loose. There are other systems in the body that have to come into play before this happens, before you have a breakdown of this connection. And we'll talk about this a lot in the future. Here we have the corium parts again in a different picture. You see the solar corium here with the bar corium ending in the middle of the frog. Here you have the secondary lamellae shown, and this is the sole that is taken off of that corium. Very good dissection. This is a sagittal cut that shows, one more time, the periopal being produced by the perioplic corium. This little bit here produces this skin that is laid over the edge of the hoof wall. This here is the hoof wall in the coronary bulge, growing out of the coronary bulge. And this is the periopal covering the upper edge of that hoof wall and keeping it safe and keeping it moist. Again, water is important for that. This is the hoof capsule removed, the coronary bulge again, also seen here in this area. And here. This is what grows the hoof wall. As you can see here, the hoof wall sits again in this coronary bulge. Actually, sorry. Oh, we start this over. It sits like this. And here grows the hoof wall. One more time, the sole with its bar corium. This is a little confusing because it's not three-dimensional. That doesn't mean that the bar goes all the way over here. It just looks that way. And this is a schematic that just basically tells you what grows how, which corium grows what. Perioplic corium grows down the hoof wall, but only a little bit, not as far as it is drawn here. The horn tubules are grown from the coronary corium down the hoof wall. The lamellar corium pushes out connective horn and some horn tubules, which is something we didn't know, but that makes good sense. How this connects, and I hope this becomes clearer in the animations. This is the sole horn here in front of the frog that gets produced by the solar corium, and the frog horn that gets produced by the frog corium. And as you can see, it runs a little bit forward and this runs a little bit forward, while this runs straight out and this runs straight down. Frog corium, bulb corium, they all merge back here, but they still, so does the periopal. It merges with the frog and the bulb here in the back and makes all for one cohesive horn area. Here we have just a little bit different magnifications of this phenomenon of here having the coffin bone this way, then the lamellar corium coming out here and building these little fingers that produce this horn. And you see here how these fingers have little side fingers. And this whole, if you pull this all apart, you have an enormous contact surface. This here, in this case, this is the hoof wall. And these lamellae produce this connecting horn. And here you have a little, in the last picture you have a little bit of magnification, and this is the real picture from an electronic microscope where you can see those little side folds here, producing this connective horn and producing horn tubules. Not a whole lot, but a few. So the wall is built from the top down and from the inside out. And this building the wall from the inside out also makes for a very tight connection of the coffin bone to the hoof wall. In our school of thinking, and I know there are others, I'm at least aware of that, we believe that the hoof capsule is suspended, the coffin bone is suspended in the hoof capsule by this connection. It does not sit on the sole. Was it sitting on the sole, it would crush the solar corium at all times. I do not think this is so. It is hanging in on the coffin bone. The hoof capsule is connected to the coffin bone, and the coffin bone hangs in the hoof capsule, suspended and fastened in by the lamellar corium. Here we have an even better magnification of this. You see how these are the lamellae that are produced by the lamellar corium and push out this horn here, which is then keratinized primary epidermal lamellae. And they push out this way while the direction of the hoof wall growth is going down here. And here you see again these lamellae, when they are pulled apart, you see all these little feathers that come out here. And every one of them connects here the coffin bone to the hoof wall. everyone. So it's a very strong structure. This is just a great picture. We have again here the coffin bone. Oh, break. Coffin bone with the lamellacorium producing the connective horn that connects the hoof capsule. And you see all these little horn tubules that become denser and denser and merge here with the horn tubules that come from the top. This is the area of where the wall turns into the bar, and this is so a little bit squished. It is not always like this. It is like this when the horn here comes too far around and is not quite straight. In a very healthy hoof, I do not think that this scenario presents itself the same way. But when you put more magnification into this, then you see this here also, how this squishing it together makes for a totally different orientation of those lamellae, those papillae, I'm sorry. Lamellacorium produces lamellae. All the other choria produce papillae and produce different horn. And last but not least, donkeys have the same structure in general. They have the lamellacorium around the coffin bone. They just have more bulb behind. That structure is a little bit different, but the whole way it grows is the same. This was the first lamellacorium hoof we looked at, and this is that of a donkey. I personally do not have a lot of experience with donkeys. I have, however, some colleagues who trim quite a few of donkeys, and we're going to get in the trimming session to this. We will not leave the little donkeys out. Now I have to find my other animations. Let me just take this down so it's a little cleaner. So what we have here is a cut, or actually if I hold the mouse on, we have the whole hoof capsule, and this is the bottom with the frog, the bars, and the hoof wall showing, also the sole horn. And here in the back where I have the hand, however if I move it the whole thing will move, we have the bulbs merging with the frog and merging with the perioblique corium. When we take this around, we have the wall on the outside here where you can see on the top the coronary bulge, or where the horn tubules start to grow. You also see now how the horn tubules grow on the side more forward. And when we turn this around, you can see how the horn tubules on the front grow straight down, vertical to the ground. Here growing a little bit forward. This would be a very healthy situation that you seldom see, except for the rings, but they I guess that's artistic license here. And then on the inside of this hoof capsule, we see, let me just do this with one side, that's a little bit easier. The coronary bulge, and here you can see how this merges into the bar corium. The bar is really only a continuation of the wall. When you trim it, you also see how you can feel that this is the same material. It has the same hardness as the wall. Wall and bar material have the same consistency. Then on the inside we have the solar horn, and here in the front we have these lamellae that now you know what's on the other side, the corium, the lamella corium, and they merge the coffin bone to the hoof capsule. And then here in the back the bulbs, as you can see here, that you also can see now how this connects. I'm using my hand to show you this. This doesn't do you any good. How it connects with the periopal. So here this connects, this periopal connects here to the bulb in the back, and what you can see here a little bit is also how the bars, if I leave this like this, how the bars almost make a ridge in the hoof. And we have seen this already last time when I showed you how the coffin bone sits in the hoof capsule that was half cut away. Then we saw those ridges there as well. So that tells us something about the underlying structure. Okay. This here is the schematic of the hoof capsule again. You see here the hoof wall, and this is, whoa, not so fast. Let me see if I can go a little bit back. No. Yeah, I can. Here you have, you see the, this is basically to show you where they took this from, how the horn grows. And what we get here is a little piece of hoof wall. In this case it's supposed to be frog horn, and these holes that you see, these are actually the holes where the papillae insert. The papillae are so like little cow tits, and they nourish the horn tubules. And you see here the horn tubules, when you go back here, try to do this. That doesn't work on that only works in PowerPoint. But I have a pen here, sorry. These here are the horn tubules. Oops. The light beige. The dark brown is the connective horn. And the connective horn is very important. You can see this now. If you had only horn tubules, they would be all loose. You have to have the connective horn in order to glue those all together. And here you see the papillae. Well, I said they are like little cow teats. Doesn't give much credit to cows, but they reach into the horn tubule, and Dr. Bauker says that they nourish the horn tubule, that the horn tubule itself is actually built from cells that are outside the papillae. That is his research. I have asked him to send me a picture of these cells that build the horn tubules, but hasn't arrived yet. I have to call him again and remind him of that. So this is another view, and here you see this. These are the papillae, and these are the horn tubules, what's streaming down there. And this is the connective horn. Went a little fast. Let's do this one more time. Papillae with horn tubules, and the brown stuff is the connective horn. And when we look at this, and I really like the way they have this done, we can go back to this. It just makes a cut through the hoof wall and shows us how this hangs together. And I thought this makes it very clear. If we go very slow back here, you see, hold it, no, hold it, hold it, hold it. You see here the lamellae that come out of the coffin bone. This here is coffin bone. And they push this here, this horn, and produce this horn with all these little folds. So let's try this again and go a little further on. And now you see all the horn tubules that as they get more to the outside of the wall, they are becoming more and more pushed together. What that means is there's less interconnective horn on the outside of the wall than is on the inside of the wall. And when you cut the hoof wall with a very sharp knife, very slick, you can see that in the hoof wall. You can see how the closer you come to the white line, the closer you come to this area, the farther apart the horn tubules are. You need either good glasses or very good eyesight for this, however. And here you have these little folds. And what they are saying here is that these folds, the lamellae folds, also produce horn tubules that they add to the hoof wall. I had to take the sound out. They talk to this. So I hope that this makes it yet again a little bit more clear how this works. But we're going to get another one of those. I just have to, let's first go to, no, it's this one. There is this question about how does this happen that we said the hoof capsule, we said the coffin bone is suspended in the hoof capsule and produces horn towards the hoof capsule. And we also said that the horn tubules in the hoof capsule grow from the top down. So if the hoof capsule grows from the top down, what happens to the coffin bone? Why does it always stay in the same position? Why does it not sink down with the coffin bone? This makes to many people not a lot of sense. So this talks actually about this, how these two are connected and how the horn is produced, perioblique horn, horn tubules, and then the the epidermis and how they work together. One more time. This produces the horn tubules. They grow down. This is the epidermis that is produced by the lamellacorium. And here you see how they are pushed out the whole time. Now when we go to this section again that we had in the little animation before, these lamellae push out from papillae single horn tubules. That's what they do. And then they have a mechanism that they constantly renew and work with this. And what we have here, what we're now talking about, we can go a little bit back about this. I think that last section is important. And what we have now here is at the very end of the lamellacorium, where it merges kind of with the sole corium, we have some papillae that are again unique, and they are named the terminal papillae. They are sitting here on the very edge, and they produce what we know as the white line. And that's this area. But they really only produce this part of the horn. I hope this made sense, and we will see how this goes now in the question and answer session.